In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, easy to use and reliable destruction cards have always been valuable. You can sift through all 7 errors and you'll find them at some point in the competitive meta. Yes, sometimes we have lulls when destruction isn't exactly the best or most ideal way of taking out opponents' cards. See the Duelist Alliance era for a prime example. Destruction cards just sucked versus Shadows and Burning Abyss. However, just like the seasons, they always come back. When you think of some of the most popular spot removal destruction cards throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! History, you're probably inclined to mention names like Mirror Force, Heavy Storm, Torrential Tribute, Dark Armed Dragon, Zodiac Trident, or maybe Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer. But what if I told you in the beginning of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s days, there was a simple and very practical little spell that basically every deck ran? This spell only destroyed a single monster on the field, yet for its time, it was revered every bit as much as juggernauts that would eventually become banned, like Regeki and Dark Hole. The card I'm referring to is Tribute to the Doomed, and in this video, you're going to learn when and why this card was meta. But before we jump into the video, if you like learning about Yu-Gi-Oh! History or just enjoy my videos in general, then help the channel grow by giving the video a like, commenting your thoughts below, sharing the video with your friends on social media, or by subscribing so that you don't miss new ones which I upload every week. Also, I just made a Twitter account, so if you want to keep up to date, give me a follow at MegaCapitalG. Tribute to the Doom is an incredibly old card from the Duel Monsters era, so there's no shame for duelists who don't know the name or what it does off the top of their head. Originally, it was a normal magic card that read, quote, discard 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to destroy 1 monster card on the field, regardless of position, unquote. If it sounds a little complicated to determine whether or not that discard is a cost, or if Tribute to the Doom targets, just know you're not alone. Complicated and bad card text was notoriously rampant during DM, and even though I played shortly after this card's release in the TCG, I can't tell you for certain if the card targeted or if the discard was a cost, but I'm pretty sure that it did and that it was. At least that's how we played it at my locals. The story begins with the release of Tribute to the Doomed in the OCG's Volume 5 on September 23rd, 1999. Yes, I usually keep my videos TCG focused, but number 1, the card was far bigger in the OCG than it was in the TCG, and number 2, I am branching out more into OCG history as well, hopefully you like. Tribute was released as one of the 4 ultra rares in the set and was an immediate success. One of the things about the OCG's metagame in the first year of 1999 is that there wasn't a ton of great monster removal. Actually, let me clarify that. There wasn't a ton of great monster removal you could max out on, despite a plethora of insanely powerful and broken cards like Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, Imperial Order, Crush Card Virus, and Harpy's Feather Duster being completely unlimited for the entire year. The OCG limit regulation did in fact exist. On it, however, was just 3 cards. And unfortunately for duelists looking to get rid of monsters, the 3 cards were all destruction-based monster removal ones. Regeki, Dark Hole, and Trap Hole were those 3 cards. Upon release, duelists rejoiced as Tribute to the Doomed gave them another way of answering offense, big boss monsters, and, well, basically anything that was on the field that they didn't want to deal with. Much like Regeki and Dark Hole, Tribute to the Doom was incredibly versatile. The card could deal with big monsters, little ones, it could even take out set monsters to stop your opponent from either defending themselves or make sure they didn't get off those pesky flip effects. Players were conscious of the discard cost that on paper made the card a -1. However, discarding a boss monster then reviving it with Monster Reborn became one of the earliest meta combos. Keep in mind, Monster Reborn, just like almost everything at the time, was playable at 3, so this combo was pretty consistent. Also, Pot of Greed was unlimited too, so even if you did take a -1 on the Tribute activation, there's a good chance you could make it up fairly easily. Tribute to the Doom instantly found its way into all the competitive decks, such as Good Stuff Beatdown, the Price of Blood Ultimate Offering deck, the Equipment Beatdown deck, and yes, even Exodia. To put things into perspective, at this time, it was not only considered a competitive staple, but also to be 100% on par with the Juggernaut Change of Heart, which premiered in the same set. This probably sounds ludicrous, but for a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG players, the release of Change of Heart in Tribute to the Doomed signaled an exciting change in Yu-Gi-Oh! Prior to these, face-down monsters could usually only be dealt with using raw brute force, a la just randomly attacking into them and hoping that your attack was higher than their defense. But now players had more nuanced ways of dealing with this situation, and knowing when/if it was right to use either power card was considered skill expression. For these reasons, Tribute to the Doomed and Change of Heart were often seen as equal ground rivals. Interestingly enough, while Doomed was already a competitive staple upon release, after the launch of Volume 6, it actually got even better. This was due to the release of the format warping Sangan and Witch of the Black Forest, both of which originally would have their effects activate upon being discarded and didn't ever need to hit the field to trigger. This would effectively erase the inherent Neg-1 element of Tribute to the Doomed. However, what really opened up the card was its playmaking ability in Exodia decks. Obviously, Doom's key play was still taking out opposing monsters, but in Exodia specifically, you could actually use it on your own copies of Sangan and Witch to search pieces of Exodia. While not always a practical play in terms of raw card advantage, the Exodia deck didn't win by banking on that tactic anyways, so under the right circumstances, this became a legitimate strategy that accelerated your win condition. After the release of Last Will, when Exodia really took off, this niche play actually became far more important because it would trigger that card as well and often led to Exodia FTKs. This might sound crazy, but when Exodia truly reached its competitive peak, Tribute to the Doomed was actually preferred over the far more powerful Regeki strictly because it was more versatile in the deck. After the first update to the limit regulation list, which attempted to torch the Tier 0 Exodia OCG deck, Tribute to the Doomed returned to its second state, a competitive staple in every deck, that continued throughout the 2000 year. Tribute to the Doomed would, however, eventually fall out of favor because more removal cards were released in the OCG, such as Torrential Tribute, Ring of Destruction, and Snatch Steel. With each subsequent release, the card just got progressively worse. On the TCG side of things, sadly, it was almost an identical situation. Actually, I'd say that it was probably exacerbated because the TCG booster sets were twice as large, meaning we got removal cards much faster over here. In addition, not only did the TCG never get a chance to exploit Witch of the Black Forest and Sangan on the level that the OCG did, but the TCG started with a far more comprehensive and fleshed out restricted list, which saw the Exodia pieces limited immediately. This meant Tribute to the Doom and the TCG just had one less deck to work with. It also suffered from so many cards being limited so fast, Monster Reborn being a key one. This card spent an entire year at 3 for the OCG, but in the TCG was limited on our very first list. Basically, us TCG duelists didn't get all the insane plays that ran wild in the OCG, or they just weren't nearly as consistent. The card did still reach the meta level and saw lots of play in competitive locals from its premiere in the second core booster set, Metal Raiders, up until right after the release of Labyrinth of Nightmare, a little over 6 months. Labyrinth of Nightmare released Torrential Tribute for the TCG and was a massive hit on release, as well as the card being completely unlimited at that time. This made players far less open to the idea of playing a potential Neg-1 spell that could only get rid of a single monster when TT could wipe an opponent's entire board for a single card and could be used during either player's turn. The absolute nail in the coffin came in the next set, Legacy of Darkness. The proud, or maybe uninformed, few duelists still attempting to play Tribute to the Doomed would have no reason after the release of Exile Force. This card basically mimicked Tribute to the Doomed to a T and did it at the expense of one card rather than two. It could also be searched with reinforcements of the army and was a monster, thus could deal damage and be tributed for even bigger monsters. Exile Force effectively power crept Tribute to the Doom on release, and sadly, the card never recovered. Its legacy in the TCG was far less notable, but the card still did have a nice run, even if it never reached that god tier status that it was known for across the Pacific. And just like that, we're at the end of this Yu-Gi-Oh story. If you enjoyed the video, or more importantly, you learned something, give the video a thumbs up, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, share the video with your friends on social media, subscribe if you have not already, and follow me on Twitter at MegaCapitalG. By the way, come back for more videos like this one, and thanks for watching.